Hello, everyone. Hi out there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name's Clive Snell. I'm the CEO of Contact Live. Welcome to this very first webinar for Contact in 2023. I'm delighted to welcome Sami, Benchekroun, CEO, co-founder of Morressier, who is going to be running things for us. Sami and Contact go back a long way. Sami spoke at the very first Contact in 2018. He has spoken at subsequent ones, and I have no doubt he will speak at future ones. We talk a lot here about content pioneers, and I'm not joking. I think Sami is a perfect example of a content pioneer. You'll find out more about that as we get into the discussion. He has over 10 years experience in academic conferences, scholarly publishing, entrepreneurship, and he is dedicated to increasing the impact and reach of scientific conferences. That's a perfect topic for the beginning of the Contact year. Our mission, if you don't know, is to create conference platforms to help navigate huge technological change and transformation. Everyone who's joining us is joining on Zoom webinar where your mics are muted, but please do file questions in the Q&A and we'll pick them up at the end. We kind of are looking at about a 45-minute program. Sami's going to speak for 25, 30 minutes, then we'll draw things together for Q&A. The whole thing will be recorded and we will be able to have that up within a day or so. So I'm just going to delightedly hand over to Sami, who's going to talk about the potential of expanding the research lifecycle through digital transformation and cultural disruption. Over to you, Sami.
Thank you so much, Clive. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be with you. Wait a second. Start my video. Yeah. Start my video. Here we go. So I hope you can all see me. Thank you so much again. You know, I'm looking forward to also meeting everybody in person. But for now, I'm very excited to have that webinar. Let me just share my screen, and I hope that everybody sees the screen. So again, thank you for joining me today to talk about strategies for basically expanding the research lifecycle. You know, it's a very dear topic of mine, and I'm very excited to be with all of you, and I'm looking very much forward to the conversation later on. Let me just first introduce myself and also Morressier. So Morressier has been around since a couple of years, and we are in a very exciting time at Morressier. So we've built a platform that is transforming publishing infrastructure and workflows at basically every stage of the research lifecycle. And we got our start really at I think the core of academic and scientific discourse, which is around conferences and conference content and early stage research, because we also see so much potential in that type of content. So imagine being able to harness the power of science's latest ideas, share them, learn from them years before those findings would actually be published in a journal or in a patent. So it's all about that element of accelerating research breakthroughs and scientific breakthroughs. We are by now a global company, and we are working with over 200 societies and publishing partners. And we have a headquarter in Berlin, and we have an office in London and in Washington, DC. I moved to the US last year, which is very exciting, and I'm in our Washington, DC office right now. So just two words maybe to me, not to talk too much about myself, but really talk about the topic then much more. My name is Sami. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Morressier. I'm a Berlin raised, but again, as I said, I moved to DC just last year to be much closer with our clients and with our dear partners in the US. And I've been talking about early stage research, as Clark mentioned, for over 8 years now, and I've been fortunate enough to speak on one of the first contact events about early stage research, and it's been really exciting on how people also took on that notion and the wording early stage research and how the communication really accelerated. I'm very passionate about bringing sort of more transparency and visibility across that scholarly ecosystem, starting from the very first abstract or poster or presentation that has been presented at a conference over to conference proceedings, but then integrating that very systematically within the manuscript, within the journals, and beyond. So let's start things off by talking about that entire research life cycle. Where are we now, and how basically how can we move forward? So there's just so much research in that life cycle, and I think in one of my first presentation in Contact, I've shared a similar graphic. There's a lot of that research that is completely hidden. All of the work, all of these insights and research objects, they're seen just by a very select group of peers and very early in a very early stage of the research cycle. And this means that we're often communicating only months or even years after scientific breakthrough has really occurred. And I think COVID was really a we basically discussed science very openly. Now, I really don't want to dwell in 2020 as we're living sort of in a different world now. But this really was a defining moment, especially for the world of scholarly communication. Instantly, basically, conferences around the world changed, right? So the way we have approached conferences changed completely, from those crowded poster halls and conference meeting rooms to those virtual and hybrid events that are that we are in right now, and like the ones we are hosting very often on the Morressier platform. And now, as we sort of return to some form of normal, we have to look very critically at what we have learned from the transformational period of the COVID time, so since 2020. And we don't know what that future will be, but we do know that that online and virtual options had some real, very real benefits for the community, and we see that these things are continuing to happen. So the bottom line is really this, right? Normal, or what we knew as normal isn't really good enough. Normal isn't really fast enough neither. And if COVID taught us only that one thing, it's really how important it is for science to move fast and to collaborate really globally, and to have sort of that connecting tissue between all the items and all the documents. So a return to normal would mean a world where basically early stage research is sort of forgotten, right? Really, being back in those poster halls, which in terms of format is a nice format, but really that online world is very relevant. So either people attend conferences, right, in person, and miss sessions because programs are again getting packed with amazing scientific output, or the posters are basically taken off the wall after 3 days on a poster hall. So conferences are a time of intense sort of information overload, and it's just too much to take in all at once. So let's use sort of the learnings that we've had and really optimize. And all of those problems where for people who were able to attend an in-person event to begin with, right? A return to normal would also mean early stage research is inaccessible, right? We saw a massive increase in attendance and in engagement for many marginalized groups. Early career researchers are more likely to be able to attend virtually, as are those who are female or genderqueer. We also saw an increase in engagement from the global south. And this global cross-generation engagement is way too important for science, for the scientific community. And we need every great mind in the world working on really the latest science and really participating in that. So we also learned that during the year or so of limited travel, that conferences are not really always too sustainable, right? So we need to think about that very clearly. They have a huge carbon footprint and impact to the environment, and conferences also struggle sometimes to offer inclusive opportunities. with diversity statements that are lacking and limited facilities for nursing people, or other with care obligations. So there is a whole world that I feel opened up after the times of COVID that need to be addressed. And despite the sustainability issues, the accessibility issues, and the transparency issues, early stage research and dialogue on conferences is one of the most important part and discussion of the scientific process. And it holds the key to really truly accelerating science and scientific breakthroughs. And we can use early stage research to basically also forecast trends, right? So the discussion that is happening is a great indicator for everything that is happening in the future. And only 9% of the research that is presented at a conference has already been published, right? So it's a significant amount that has not been published, to be very precise here. And the publishing funnel is, that is sort of the dream publishing funnel. And understanding the early stage research landscape can be really the key to guide the publishing programs of the future, to guide, we might have some society publishers and publishers here in this call, and early stage research can really guide different publishing programs. It can also be a key for directly funneling some of the most popular and groundbreaking work directly into journals, or leveraging that content. And conferences and publications often, unfortunately, sit very separate, in separate teams that don't really communicate very often with one another. So integrating research further, and research further upstream even, can have a massive impact on the entire publishing program, on sharing articles, on having a much clearer picture over everything within a scientific organization. Early stage research is also a place to identify future leaders, future thought-provoking and inspirational leaders. And conferences are one of the first places where those scientists go and talk about their work. We have had many great examples of people sharing early ideas at conferences, and are really discovered there. Here we have the truly amazing story of Kati Kariku, whose work on mRNA vaccines has only been shared at conferences. She faced doubts and she faced rejections when it came to journal publications, but continued to share and talk about her work at conferences, and that paid off, right? To all of us, right? That the fact that she was so present at conferences, that she was so communicative at conferences, and when it became critical in 2020, her work on mRNA vaccines was so foundational to what we saw in the last 1, 2, 3 years with all the vaccines that emerged. So conferences hold also those the raw diamonds, if you will, that are so important to uncover and to really integrate properly into the scholarly ecosystem. And we're seeing a trend across science, literally across the board, that scientists want and need access to research much faster, much earlier in the process, right? Preprints is a perfect example for that. They have skyrocketed in the past decades, and we have and we see a future where early stage research does sort of the same thing, right? But preprints is basically an early version of the manuscript that is shared earlier, and the amount of interaction with that type of content was just phenomenal. And again, we see the same type of dynamic around early stage research. We see that with our partners, and it's marvelous. So this all really looks great. We move faster, we're more inclusive, we're making more strategic editorial decisions because we've integrated early stage research. But I think basically the big question here is, but how do we do it? What do we do? What are the first steps? I'm a person within a society, within a publisher. What do I do, or even in corporate, what do I do as a next step? So this is where basically that big buzzword of digital transformation comes in. Again, I know it's a buzzword, but and maybe makes some of you in the audience roll your eyes, but really true digital transformation means that creating that infrastructure, creating a new infrastructure, a new type of tooling, so that we can actually process that type of sharing and reviewing and publishing, of any format at any stage of the research lifecycle in a much different way. How can we basically use technology and use digital transformation to reassess our foundational technology? So imagine basically an integrated digital ecosystem where you can see the evolution of science from the very earliest bits over to all the bits and pieces, up to a manuscript, and then also beyond. It leads to accountability. Researchers have no reluctance to share negative results or posters. That at least is our experience over the last 5 to 8 years. It leads to better research integrity, much better research integrity, because we have a transparent view of how the research has changed, and it's a system enhanced by AI and machine learning, right? We'll talk about AI later on. It's also another buzzword, but with crazy implication, as we've seen over the last weeks. So this very system is more reproducible, right? A huge topic that the industry is talking about since years. As we have interlinked set of research object with data sets, methods, and posters, all is citable, all is integrated. So a much more transparent way. And all of this together will raise the tide and lead to much better, we believe, papers and sound science, because it's built on such an amazing foundation. And the very foundation of this ecosystem is an integrated publishing workflow. Science isn't really two-dimensional at all. So why should publishing be that two-dimensional, right? The world has been calling the journal article obsolete for years. And the journal article is just a tip of the iceberg when it comes to the research behind it, right? So let's reassess that for good. We also in this industry sometimes struggle with technological change, right? Especially when it comes to scalability, which is a huge topic that we face with a lot of our clients. We have so many systems that are not really interlinked. We have pieces to the workflow that don't really talk to one another, meaning we have no real data to make decisions, and meaning we lose time transferring and uploading from one stage to the next one. So the entire system needs to be rethought, right? From all those partially manual process to really an integrated flow, and then really understanding of what kind of data do we need? What kind of a data do we need to answer our questions? What do we really need in order to move forward, to as a society, as an association, as a publisher, as an institution, as a company? How can we move forward by answering those questions? And an integrated workflow will give exactly those things. Will give many of those things. It will save publishers time and quite frankly money, while also giving them flexibility to review and to publish any type of content. A single integrated system also removes potential mistakes and also unnecessary complexities. There's really a huge effect that comes with that, and it's a better user experience for every member of the community who wastes time trying to manage the administrative side of peer review, rather than focusing on the importance of the work. And all of this integration has to come with research integrity, right? Research integrity is really the heart of it, and we see these workflows with AI-enhanced manuscript checks, flight potential, AI-related plagiarism with AI-powered checks. There's many things that we can now and we need to talk about. And we see the ability to find reviewers much more easily as well, because all the stages of the research life cycle live in a single workflow. Every researcher has one account that guides through the process, and it should just allow one more addition to research integrity. I think, you know, we talked about COVID before 2020, and I think the way research has been talked about, you know, screams for research integrity. If you look at the data of retracted papers over the last years, it's a growing figure. It's a significantly growing figure, which is really scary. And there's many examples of research that has been cited, but that was maybe fraudulent, or that hasn't been really double and triple checked. So it's a big topic that we need to discuss. And technology can really supercharge our ability to review at scale, right? Natural language processing can assess for relevance, and with all integrations with other tools, like for example Turnitin, we can really confidently check for plagiarism and so on, which is something that sort of is obvious, but there's so much more that technology will enable in terms of research integrity. And we only need to look at the explosions of articles in the past few weeks about ChatGPT, right? Again, you know, we've used digital transformation as a buzzword, but now ChatGPT, I think there is no way to get around it, and I'm so happy to be you know, invited here as the first, you know, webinar, and to be able to talk about ChatGPT as really one of the big things to look at. And we see on how unprepared, really absolutely dangerously unprepared some of our infrastructure is when it comes to ChatGPT and other tools. So AI is just one of the potential technologies to also disrupt the workflows. So we have to build workflows that are ready to take on today's world's challenges, right? So basically looking at, you know, using AI to also go against things like ChatGPT. So there are so many potential use cases, and I could spend probably hours discussing all the different ways that AI could and should and will but you know, influence the scholarly publishing ecosystem. But for now, I think the most important thing to remember is that it is, you know, it is a tool, it is a technology. There are things that AI does better than a human, and we've seen that with ChatGPT, that might not be writing papers just yet, but quite sophisticated abstracts. So let's take advantage of that and embed it throughout our infrastructure, to use it, to make it fast, to streamline it, and to use it for efficiency purposes. And one of the major benefits of that, as discussed, integrated publishing workflow, that I like to call, you know, the new kind of infrastructure for the ecosystem, is the ability to have all publishers, researchers, reviewers, delegates, all that data in really one place, right? It becomes much easier to set goals, to keep track of process, and to accelerate time to publish as you continue to optimize these workflows. And just to mention one thing on the time to publish, I would love to really understand and dig deep in that world from time to publish, and see on how can we actually all make that process more efficient. As in our experience with talking to many scientific societies, associations, and publishers, that KPI of time to publish is not always very clear, is not always at hand. So in the conversation, it's something that it seems like people are not really optimizing for yet. And I think that's something that we definitely need to change and then double down on. So the use cases for publishing data are far too many to really list them out step by step. But a few that make me the most excited are basically those. The first of all, the ability to find reviewers from a pool of researchers involved in early stage research. Also using advanced keyword technology, you can identify interdisciplinary reviewers who can address emerging topics. So that entire topic around understanding where to find your next reviewer. You can also fast track emerging topics from early stage research into your journal program. themed issues of journals or future OA journals and future OA revenue are all possible with the right set of data. And third of all, data on researchers' contribution to peer review and conferences can also help facilitate collaborations and connections. So, funders can identify future leaders, researchers can identify peers around the world who are interested in the same topics, right? So all very relevant topics and timely topics that need discussion. So this is really our vision for the future, and it seems easy enough. Just integrate it. Just integrate our publishing workflows into one powerful tool. But if it's easy, then why hasn't it happened yet, right? So let's talk about it. It's because on top of some of the challenges of transitioning technologies, there are some also cultural shifts that are in the making as well, right? So disruption and change always has also a long way to go when it comes to cultural changes. So for some, there are potential risks to having in progress or early work as part of the permanent record. And for these researchers, conferences are a closed, safe space to workshop ideas that may not ever amount to anything. This is especially scary in a digital world where scrutiny and canceling is commonplace. There is also a risk that tenure and promotion committees might see these failed experiments, and researchers are aware of that as well. To this, I would say, we hear you. I hear you. There's an entire technology community that hears you, but it is a risk. But as we've seen time and time again, there's so much value also in negative results. We need to find a way to prioritize collective progress without it coming with a downfall for your reputation, for the reputation of researchers, if some research turns out to be wrong. And we've seen it in technology companies in the startup ecosystem, that sharing failures is something so relevant, is something that really brings us forward as a community. And similarly to that challenge is the topic of scooping, right? The idea that you want to hold back your work in order to publish first, or benefit of your finding. It comes down to competition, basically. And even as in this article here, they found that recognition still comes to those who are second to publish. Again, we need to shift from a competitive to really a collective progress mindset, and that's the only way to accelerate real breakthroughs. And this brings me to the big topic of publish or perish, and the mindset that quantity is the most important marker of success of science. We can't seem to let go of that one. But again, to build a truly integrated publishing infrastructure with transparency across research objects and lifecycle changes, we need to change our objectives. The goal of a research should be progress, discovery. The goal cannot be simply to publish. So all of this focus on competition leads to basically cracks in the system, right? We became vulnerable as a community to predatory journals and to predatory conferences. They take advantage of the competitive mindset. They take advantage of the incredible pressure on research to publish, and this will definitely not work in the future. With this mindset, we can't really digitally transform that industry. So a big topic is that culture has also to evolve, and it has to refocus on that topic of accelerating the breakthrough, right? We need to work together and collaborate on scientific ideas, as we did in the times of COVID, right? It was sort of a very beautiful time where everything just accelerated, where there was a huge amount of dynamic. And to do that, the global community of researchers needs access to the developing ideas, right? We basically need to come much closer. We will improve trust in science because our ecosystem is much more transparent, and there's research integrity embedded at all stages, not just in the journal article, right? So a really holistic perspective into the entire workflow. And collectively, together, we can accelerate the breakthroughs that our world so desperately needs, across the world, with all crises, with all challenges that we have. So let me just focus on that slide. So I want to close this because I also see that I'm already here at 30 minutes. I close this with a call to action. Let's stop talking about change, but let's really embrace it. Let's work with it. Let's leave behind the things that are that might be broken, and let's change those patterns. We can do it when we really work together. And I think as sort of the first webinar of this year's, I like to to basically translate that energy and really hand over that energy and spread it to all of you, to see that as a call to action, to change and to really think about workflows, to really think about integrating them, be it on the abstract side, be it on the poster, presentation and content, be it in the big topic of manuscript submission. Let's change that all together. Let's integrate them all together. And I think that goes a long way. So with that, I want to thank you so much for listening, and I will open it up to Q&A. I think there's already some questions, and Clive will support in those. But generally, you also have my contact details right here. So if there's any questions that you have that came up later, then I'm very happy to answer these. And then contact me whenever, and I'm happy to discuss that. That's a very dear topic to me, so very excited about that. So Clive.
First off, Sami, fantastic, terrific presentation. Thank you so much. Really enjoyed it. And we have got a couple of very specific questions. One from Matthew Lovecraft. One of the goals of open science and connecting these different digital objects is in enabling reuse. Is this something that you're seeing as a result of publishing these within a single integrated system?
Yeah, beautiful question. Absolutely, good question. So the way we see it is that the more transparency we put into the system, the more connection we have, the more we basically understand where certain ideas came from, the better we can sort of support that entire topic of reusing and also reproducing, right? The topics that we have seen within our clients is that the moment you can actually track back, right? So you have a paper, you have a manuscript, and then you can see, all right, what was the related poster, or what was the related conference proceeding or abstract or video will help a lot in that topic of reuse. So definitely supporting the integration.
That's great. Someone has asked, what is salami slicing? Did you use that term?
Sorry?
Did you use salami slicing as a term? Salami
slicing? Yeah, salami slicing. Yeah. It's actually, so it is a scientific term. It's basically splitting of data that comes from a single research idea into multiple ideas that are publishable. So you publish them basically in several journals. And it's being used quite regularly. So we are integrating all of those research integrity checks, plagiarism, salami slicing, self-citation, ChatGPT created papers, all within the workflow checks. People get creative, and that's the word for that.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm familiar with it as a term. I didn't know it actually had that kind of academic specificity. Just a couple of things I'd quite like to pick up on. The KPI, time to publish, which you suggested was somewhat sort of difficult to pin down, shall we say? But in my view, is surely the way the world is now, that is one of the single most important things that we need to really nail. I mean, what is your kind of overall view on the resistance to that, the acceptance to that? Where's the problem, really?
Yeah. So we all know that beautiful term. What gets measured gets optimized and gets manageable. And I think that, quite frankly, we're not really at that stage yet.
Yeah.
So we don't really know. We don't have the overview as a community, as an industry, on where the challenges lie. Right? We don't know how that entire process evolves. So I really would challenge every publisher and society here in this call, and please, shout it out if I'm wrong. But I'm almost convinced that it's that most publishers in society can't really tell and connect the first abstract that has ever been shared on a con to the final journal article, and to really assess the timing. Right? How much did it take from abstract to first poster? How much time did it take from poster to presentation? How much time did it take from presentation to preprint? How much time did it take then for the manuscript in all the stages of the review process? All of those numbers are completely in the dark, and one of the reasons is that it's just hard. It's just really, really hard. So if we make our lives complicated and really just stitch all those tools together that might stem from different times with different needs, and hence not as sophisticated in terms of data, then it's just tough to manage. So, again, call for action. Let's just integrate it all to be able to measure all of that.
I think that's a really fascinating view, one to which I completely see and agree. Mithu has come back with a second follow-up question. Mithu was the one on the reuse question. She says, thank you. A second Q, if I may. How, if at all, are you seeing changes in evaluation credit for these non-paper formats, notably conference outputs, posters, etc.?
Yeah, big topic, and I try to allude to that also from a cultural angle, right? So you're absolutely right that it's still a challenge, right? Our hypotheses and what we see already, based on the work that we have done over the last years, quite some years by now, is that a first step into that direction is to issue obviously digital object identifiers, right? Issue those PIDs, persistent identifiers. So every research output, poster, presentations, data sets, get the ability to be actually cited, to be integrated into that entire ecosystem. And the moment we can integrate that into the ecosystem, we can start thinking about patterns that actually work in the world of papers, and can apply them into those that we call early stage research output. So I think one of the changes that we see is an increased citation of posters and presentation, with obviously a big disclaimer, but that does slowly, in our view, change the way conference output is being handled. And I do think that, just generally, if I may, just one element, I think that we as an industry just need to also look into this crediting system much more. I think that peer review, for example, is also not a system where reviewers are enough credited for their work. So I think that there is a huge challenge around how can we better evaluate the work of scholars, be it for posters, be it for presentation, be it for reviewing papers, and so on. So there's many things that we need to work on, and we do try to do that with technology on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, very interesting. I think you're obviously a man on a very big mission, very passionate about what you're doing, and we, I think, would agree that it's a relatively conservative space. What kind of, you've been doing this for many years as well. I mean, where are the big cultural barriers, do you think? Where are the big objections? And equally, what is your level of acceptance out there? People say, yeah, you're right, we need to do this.
Yeah, so I do think that the industry is interesting from that perspective. So there has been an analysis of many researchers and many scholars and many reviewers. So if you ask the researchers and the reviewers and scholars that are conducting research what their number one challenge is in the entire publishing process, then they will all unanimously say the technology is outdated. The technology is not where it should be, right? So the awareness of researchers and scholars and peer reviewers and editors is very high. It's very high. They are craving and they're asking, demanding almost for a new system to be in place. So my hypothesis is that they are not that they will no matter what generation, by the way. So some people might put it into a generational challenge. I don't agree to that. I think that you know, the iPhone and other newer technologies is a great example of the adaptability of all generation of new technology if it's done well, right? So it's not them. What I do think is I would love to embrace, or I would love also another call for paper to my dear partners within the scholarly ecosystem, publishers, scientific societies, and association. I think that there is still a little bit of reluctance, maybe even fear, maybe even challenge, because you know this change is not really obvious. You know, what is the real outcome? So I think that there needs to be, we need to go much more hand in hand and really support the decision makers at publishers, scientific societies, and association to be sometimes a little bit bolder with their move. So and I completely, just to double down on that, I completely understand that it might be scary to change systems that are so deeply rooted in their day-to-day work. So I completely understand it, but I do feel that it's a necessity to work together and to improve that.
Yeah, very interesting. Sami, I'll just talk with Dr. Neeraj Mehta. That's not so much a question, that's much more of a pitch. So I think you can get to that. He's interested in exploring India and APAC with you, and he's wishing you well using technology. I think this is such a fascinating topic. We could literally talk for hours, if not days, which is one of the reasons that Contech exists as well. I sometimes think anecdotally, if someone arrived from a completely alien planet, never been on the planet, never been on Earth before, and you said, this is how science works, they might say, I think you should do it a different way, start again. And if anyone out there wants to find someone who's trying to do that, I think Sami is, I think he's on that mission, which is great. Brilliant. I'm sure we'll see, well, I'm pretty sure we'll see you at Contech Pharma, which is happening in June. I'm sure we'll see you again. Sami, thanks as ever for all of this. And thank you for everyone who attended. This will be, the recording of this great webinar will be online on our website, contech.live, hopefully by this time tomorrow, if not, certainly next week. All that remains is for me to say thanks once again, Sami, and thank you for coming, and have an enjoyable and great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.